Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort. Great to be with you on another edition of News and Views. Today we've got an action-packed episode for you. Right up front on our news trends, we're going to be talking with a good friend of mine, Roger Helmy, who is an industry expert on where the trends are going. He and I are going to talk about three of the hot trends happening in transit right now in our news segment. And then for our newsmaker interview, we'll be talking to our own Mike Bismeyer, who recently won a big award at the Canadian Urban Transit Association. He'll tell us all about that and his efforts in making kindness cool. And then finally, Teresa and I, our producer, will be talking about what's coming up this coming week at APTA, the American Public Transportation Association big triennial event, the expo that's happening in Orlando. We'll tell you about some of these events happening on the Future of Transportation segment. But first, it's my pleasure to bring on the air for the first time Modaxo's Director of Product Management, Roger Helmy. Roger, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Happy to be here.
Modaxo is one of the world's leading transit technology companies with offices all over the world, and Roger is in charge of developing new products for them around the world. He and I have been friends for a while. He and I recently did a webinar at an R&D summit, and we were talking about three of the biggest trends, Roger, and you and I talked about what those trends ought to be based on kind of everything you and I are hearing from the industry. And I mean, what are you hearing from the industry now?
Yeah, I mean, at the very top of the list, three things I think we keep hearing about: electrification. A lot of agencies have been focused on procuring electric buses and essentially are facing mandates to go zero emission and carbon neutral. They are also focused on microtransit or demand responsive transit, depending on where in the world you are. But that's an important, new initiative, I would say, that agencies are undertaking now to ensure that they can provide equitable services to their communities and really look at places where traditional fixture just doesn't make sense. And then certainly safety in transit, given we're in a global health crisis, it's certainly top of mind. And, even, when or pre-pandemic, it's always kind of been right at the top of the list in terms of priorities for any.
It has, you're right. But it's funny how the definition has changed, isn't it? I mean, traditionally, I've been doing transit for over 30 years now, and there's traditionally been two primary definitions of safety. One is related to accident prevention, right? So we measure that in the transit industry with a term called AFR, accident frequency ratio. And the larger transit agencies measure it per accidents per million miles. And for paratransit, it's often measured accidents per 100,000 miles. And it's even divided even further into preventable accidents per 100,000 miles. Then you've got the other type of safety, which is, my personal safety on a vehicle. So that's an important safety. But now, one of the other ways that transit has really focused on safety over the last year or two, though, has been with the whole COVID thing, right? I mean, we've covered it extensively here in the podcast, but Stuart Mader, Mr. Vax Transit, helped organize 450 transit agencies in North America to provide free transportation to where the COVID shots were happening. And then places like Jacksonville, Florida, with Nat Ford, they actually took the vaccine right out there. So now there's like a third definition of safety, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, health is, a critical piece of that. So we all know, it's been very well documented in the news just how easy it is to contract the virus. And, in the wake of the pandemic, agencies really focused on buttoning up their processes around things like sanitization of vehicles and things of that nature in order to, ensure a healthy environment for their riders. And it's so important. And I mean, it's not going to go away, right? I just don't think it's going to go away. It's proven how critical it is.
Well, and I think the CTAA, the Community Transportation Association of America, recently came out with a study that actually Stuart Mader helped develop for them. And it showed what transit agencies should do to remain relevant, what our focus should be. And obviously our focus on the 9 to 5 commuter has been affected dramatically by, people going to hybrid work schedules and not going into the office every day. But another area where we can focus our efforts is on service redesign to to allow people to get to where they need to go today and to focus on the health needs of the community. Part of that is the demand response thing you mentioned there, Roger, where you talked about how that's become even more prevalent over the last year or two. Microtransit or mobility on demand for people who do not have disabilities was just really starting to become a trend prior to the pandemic. But now it seems like everything in the world has gone on demand. You know, we get our groceries on demand. We've ordered all our supplies through Amazon, on demand. And transit's no difference, is it?
No, not at all. And I think people see it, as a huge convenience, in all honesty, right? You could go walk, however many feet or maybe further to wait for a bus, or you can call it up on your phone and see when it's going to arrive, right by your house, down the street at the corner kind of thing. So, I think agencies are now looking at this new type of transportation and are asking themselves, well, can we provide a higher level of service and convenience to our riders? And does it actually make more economic sense for us, right? Ridership's changed. It's still a bit depressed. And a lot of people moved out of the core of the cities, right? And so they're moving into, or have moved into, more suburban areas, maybe even further out in some cases. And so they're really looking at, demand responsive transit as a means to, ensure that, more of their riders can access transit, that they can deliver that service in a more convenient way, and maybe even become a little bit more efficient than the traditional fixed routes that they might have ran in that area, but maybe not necessarily close enough or at a frequency, that was frequent enough to really compel someone to take the service. So it's definitely something that brings an element of complexity to transit systems, but the value proposition for the rider is pretty good.
There's a complex series of components too, I think, that are going into why this is happening right now. I was just down at TARC a couple months ago with Carrie Butler, the Transit Authority of River City, in Louisville, Kentucky. And she said, that's our number one need, Paul, right now. We could use 100 drivers right now. So commercial drivers are difficult to get right now. It takes normally 8 to 10 weeks to train people. And so microtransit doesn't require a CDL driver. And a lot of times the drivers that are driving these vehicles are in Uber, Lyft style, TNCs, et cetera. So it's a whole different group of drivers that are being attracted. Then you've got also the fact that these routes are being changed based on the new ridership patterns. You just mentioned that, where, I was just in Las Vegas with MJ Maynard, and she said, Paul, with this new ARP money, we're getting the third tranche of funds from Washington. We're changing frequencies and increasing on some routes, but we're also adding a microtransit component to certain zones to make sure those folks get that the equitable inclusiveness that you talked about. And so there's a lot of factors going into play in this. I think it's also the same kind of thing happening with what you mentioned, zero emission buses, right? For the last couple of years, everyone has been focused on cleaning up the environment here in the US and around the world. Transit agencies have actually now received policy guidance in a lot of places like California or like in London, where TfL did this, where they're saying, we have to be zero emission or very low emission by certain dates. So every vehicle we purchase going forward is going to have to be either electric battery, hydrogen, or CNG. What I'm hearing, Roger, is that hydrogen is the new electric, so to speak. I mean, I was just at the Transportation Association of Maryland conference on Kent Island a few weeks ago, and I got to, I've seen hydrogen buses before with Lauren Skyver out there, but I got to see my first one on the East Coast, not in California, and it is happening. What's your thoughts on all of that, electric buses, and what are you seeing? I mean, you're talking to people all over the world, places, like Denmark and Europe that are really pushing this as well.
Yeah, I mean, both great trends, right? I mean, I think they're all underpinned by wanting to go green, right? And that's really the driver. And I think that's and there's some very distinct differences between battery operated buses and hydrogen operated buses, but at the same time, I think the electric technology is probably a little bit more advanced than hydrogen. There's trade-offs, and I think this is going to be something that evolves over the course of the next many years. I think we might end up seeing, probably more electric buses go into service. We see them being procured, globally at scale quite a bit more than hydrogen. But, as that technology starts to mature, that could change.
And I think some people, I just was talking to a transit leader just like in the last 2 weeks who said they really prefer to have a mix in their fleet, even though for maintenance, purposes, it's nice to have one type of vehicle, but to have multiple power sources in case something goes wrong, you don't have, so to speak, all your eggs in one basket. So I think you're right. I think we'll see this play out. The one fella that was showing me his hydrogen bus said basically battery electric power is, we actually had a speaker on recently on our podcast talk about it. They said it's basically 10 years ahead of where hydrogen, technology is. And so it is something I think these three trends that we'll see continue to play out. Like you said, we're not completely out of the COVID thing yet. There could be other variants. There could be future things happening. The role of transit in this new area of safety still has to be fleshed out. The service redesign that people are going through now is still playing out in cities across the country. And this on-demand transit, people are still developing apps and coming up with all kinds of ways to put the power of personalized transit on your phone, in your hand. And policy objectives in order to clean the environment are really driving a lot of what transit is about. It's almost become, I used to say safety, efficiency, reliability, and world-class customer service were the four things that transit was about. But now through policy objectives that boards and funding authorities have added on, really we've added in two additional components, I think, that become a base, kind of a base purpose for transit. And that is to produce more equity and inclusion in our communities and to clean up the environment. I'll give you the last word.
I think you're bang on, Paul. I think you're bang on. It's about, enabling more sustainable cities for everyone that lives in those cities. And I think that's where, transit has a huge role, right? Because, the ability to deliver that higher level of service, as you mentioned, on demand, access those areas that you probably didn't serve well enough before and bring people back, but also couple that with clean service. I think that's probably what every city needs.
Roger Helmy, Director of Product Management at Modaxo, developing technology to help hundreds of millions of people ride transit every day. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Transit Unplugged. Hey, thanks for being with us today and staying with us on the Transit Unplugged podcast for our News and Views episode. Exciting to have with us a regular guest on the program who, at least a couple times a month, shares about kindness, and that is our own Mike Bismeyer, who is Regional Sales Director for Transit and Commercial Canada at Proterra. Mike, thanks so much for being our Newsmaker interview today.
Hey, Paul, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and congratulations on the upcoming anniversary and all the exciting changes with Transit Unplugged. Super excited for you, and always a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, I thought this would be a great way to kick off our fifth season, because today actually is the first episode of season 5 for Transit Unplugged, is to have you, one of our regular contributors, on the show, because a lot of folks may not realize, a little bit about your background, how you got into this effort of kindness is cool. And then I want to talk about some of the awards you've won. I mean, you live in kind of Western Canada, out near the Pacific Ocean, and you work for Proterra, a big electric bus company, but you have a passion that kind of drives a lot of what you do. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much. I am with Proterra. I'm on the West Coast, about 45 minutes east of downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, a little town called Abbotsford, right across the Sumas-Bellingham border for those that are more familiar with the U.S. states. But yeah, thanks. I've been in public transit now for 13 years to 2.5, 2 3/4 with Proterra. I was with a company called Say On Safely prior. So I've been in it for a while, but yeah, I've always tried to use the opportunity. I mean, I have big gratitude. We have the ability to travel around with what we do, being in sales. I love it. I love relationships, but I've always been passionate about kindness. And I've sort of made that my shtick. The kindness is cool. And it comes out of, I was bullied as a child. A lot of people don't know that story. I had about a 1.5 years really tough in school where it got really bad. I really didn't want to go to school. And then I sort of had a random act of kindness that someone did for me that sort of changed my perception on, just on how to approach things. And, basically I was being bullied daily by someone at the high school. It was made my life very miserable. Showing up at the bus stop every day, would take my lunch away in front of the other kids, put it on the ground. I was a chunkier kid back then. My mom was always really supportive and said I just hadn't hit my growing sprout yet. But this guy would take my lunch away in front of the other kids and mash it up and throw it in the garbage can, tell kids I didn't need to eat because, I was already too fat, those sorts of things, right? Of course, it bothered me. He didn't get a huge reaction out of me, but it was, inside it was eating away at me. And got to the point where I didn't want to go to school anymore. I started taking a different bus home, all those sort of things. But anyway, one day, just unbeknownst to me, I got on that same bus. That guy had taken my lunch away. I'm walking down the aisle, and some kid who I didn't know said, "Hey, you can sit with me." And so I sort of sat down on the bus. And as the bus was pulling away, he said, he just looked at me and said, "I got your back today." And I didn't know what he meant. And he opened his knapsack, and he had brought an extra lunch because he had seen mine getting taken away every day. And it just had a massive impact on me for two reasons. First of all, that, I understood that someone saw what was going on, because I really hadn't told a lot of people. I hadn't told my parents how bad it was. And then, it just was changed my perspective. All of a sudden I started thinking, well, if he's got my back, maybe I can have my own, and don't want to date myself, but in those days still had a pencil case as part of my repertoire at school. And so I dumped all the pencils out and I started to hide my sandwich in there. And I started to bring like a dummy lunch every day, which was whatever my mom didn't want in the fridge. It was a great exercise of cleaning the fridge. And I would let that guy throw that one away, and it never bothered me anymore. It just sort of changed my perspective. So that's the first random act of kindness where it profoundly impacted me. And there were some other things that had happened, but I also grew up in a home. My dad is a recovered alcoholic, drug and alcohol counselor. He's 42 years sober, has mentored people ever since. And he's the best role model I ever had because he has always been extending the hand. And we've had a plethora of people through our home that he's tried to help. So my sister and I grew up in a great home. There's always someone there at Christmas dinner that wasn't a relative that my dad was trying to give a meal and a family situation to. So just that's sort of where I got inspired. And then at my last company in Transit, there was an opportunity to start an anti-bullying foundation through an initiative we were doing. So I was one of the founders of that and became the national spokesperson. So, that's a passion for me. And so I've just tried to carry that over into the other things we do as I travel around Transit. I'm sure there's a lot of people that I've interacted with in 13 years that are tired of hearing about kindness is cool. But what's really cool is that a lot of them have adopted that message and have told me that it has meant a lot to them. I have it on my email signature, and there's just opportunities when we travel around to sort of make a difference. And I try and preach that to my fellow peers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's how it was born. And that's, how I've gone, as my wife would say, how I've become obsessed with it. And, but it's good. It's people could have worse obsessions, right? So I truly believe in it.
Well, and you've been recognized this year with some awards. Tell us about them.
Yeah, again, very fortunate. So the first thing I'll say on any award is, you don't do, my dad always said, you don't ever do anything for an award or an accolade. You do it because it's the right thing to do. So I truly believe that. I was fortunate to get notified early this year that I was nominated for the Savita Shah Award through the Mahatma Gandhi Foundation, which is for kindness and advocacy in communities. I was one of two North American winners for that. I was hugely honored. And of all things, I got the call on Pink Shirt Day, which was, I was just headed to a local business that I partnered with for a Pink Shirt Awareness Day to raise funds, call on the way. So it was, I tell you, it was very emotional. So I was super excited to win that award. It meant a lot to me. And then, I just found out a couple of weeks ago during the CUDA virtual conference, I was nominated for the Excellence Award, Leadership and Excellence through the CUDA, which is, Canadian's equivalent to APTA, for advocacy and all the things I do in communities when I travel for transit and the whole Kindness is Cool campaign. So again, a huge honor. Just to know that people are noticing and they're, again, if kindness is contagious, it's great to know that others are sort of listening in and doing some of that.
That's great. Well, congratulations, Mike. And obviously the work that you do in our industry of providing, environmentally friendly vehicles and the work that we're doing in general help people in their lives. I think that transit has really taken a shift in its modality and its emphasis even over the COVID pandemic in this moment of inflection where people are saying, transit is not just about the 9-to-5 commuter anymore, but it's really about providing access to all of life's opportunities. And sometimes for people who are underprivileged and don't have all the same opportunities that everybody else does. And so really the work that we're involved in is really falls right in with your campaign of Kindness is Cool.
You hit the nail on the head. I believe that transit is a great equalizer. It gives everybody the same opportunity. So that's why I'm passionate about transit. And I will say, in our industry during this COVID, which is very unique times that none of us probably would have ever been able to sell a script on. I will say we've seen incredible kindness and the people going above and beyond within our own industry, which has been very inspiring for me, which has kept me going. But, we've seen agencies that have pivoted and they're using vehicles to do door-to-door food deliveries. They're transporting seniors. They're taking people to COVID vaccination facilities. And I mean, it's been truly tremendous. We've had buses parked in underprivileged areas so that kids can have Wi-Fi when they're forced to do school from home. So I think there's so many people in transit doing brilliant and incredible things that we need to talk about those stories, like you said. And that's why I am passionate about it. Transit, people that are in transit are already passionate anyway. I think we see that day to day. So I think we all can go above and beyond and make a difference somehow. And it's the little things. It really is. I mean, kindness is as easy as opening a door for someone or talking to someone we haven't ever acknowledged before. And maybe that's all they need that day is someone to say hello, So yeah, I agree with you, Paul. And it's exciting times working for electric bus manufacturer. Proterra is a wonderful company and really has hit the nail on the head.
Thank you, Mike Bismeyer. Thank you for being a part of our show on a regular basis, as you have been for the last couple of years. Thank you for reaching out to me and befriending me a couple of years ago when I was out visiting Vancouver, when we connected for coffee. And thank you for the work you're continuing to do to show that we've got a heart. People in this industry have a heart. We're here mostly, I think, for the right reasons. And we look forward to working together for a long time to come.
I appreciate it, Paul. Congratulations again for everything. Thank you for the opportunity to help keep kindness cool. And we really appreciate the Trapeze partnership that we've had with you as well. So thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Elea Carey, a communications consultant who loves working with public transit agencies. We've seen a lot of changes in the ways we message about transit agencies in the last 2 years. While cleanliness and equity were themes in previous years' communications, those have become much more important messages, and they'll remain so. But there are also some significant things that haven't changed in how we talk about transit. Benefits and passenger information are still the two most important topics we need to promote. What are some of the key points to keep in mind about benefits and information messaging? Benefits can be quite wide-ranging. We can promote the personal benefits of transit, like convenience, independence, and savings, as well as the societal benefits, such as cleaner air and economic growth. Taking our learnings from the last 2 years, we can also remind the public of the mobility equity benefit transit provides by leveling the playing field for historically marginalized and under-resourced populations. Best practices in passenger information messaging is quite straightforward. Prioritize rider how-tos over all other information. Keep schedule and route information above the scroll on all your digital communications. And most of all, ride your own system using your passenger information so you can learn how well your communications work from the rider's perspective. If you'd like to talk more about messaging benefits and information or anything else related to communications in public transit, look me up on LinkedIn. My first name is spelled E-L-E-A, last name C-A-R-E-Y.
Hey, so now it's just me and you, Paul, and we haven't really recorded a session together, but APTA's coming up. By the time people listen to this, we'll be like a week away. It's my first APTA, and it's probably my first conference I've been to in years. Paul, what should I be looking for? What's going to be exciting?
Well, you're going to have a ball. I view these conferences, Tris, as I feel like I'm diving into a sea of my friends and just swimming in a sea of my friends. That's the way I view it. I'm a people person. I love people. So having 8,000 to 10,000 people together in Orlando, Florida, safely, I think is going to be phenomenal. And especially in context for the fact that we haven't been doing this for 2 years, right?
Yeah. Besides meeting all your friends again in person, because you've been to a couple conferences since, what are you really looking forward to? Who are you going to be going to go, like, I got to go see this? So
this year's APTA is a little bit different than the normal APTA conference every year. The agenda for the conference itself is rich, but it's not like overpacked with events. They want people on the expo floor, and there's hundreds and hundreds of vendors and companies and consultants and all this stuff, either who have booths or will be walking around booths interacting. And so that's really how the expo is different. It has so many, it's like the central hub of all the activity that's happening in the industry for these few days, on the second week of November.
And we were talking with Roger Helmy, and you were talking about the three big things right now: microtransit, electrification, and safety. And all those topics are on the agenda. And those seem to be the things that everyone wants to know about.
That's right. I'll be asking one of the big events that you're helping me to put on. And by the way, for those who listen to the show and have heard Tris's voice, this is Tris Hussey. He's our producer of the Transit Unplugged podcast. He's over in Vancouver. I'm in Washington, D.C. We work online together. Tris, I mean, just from a personal basis, I'll be happy to meet you in person.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we'll be working together on our 4th anniversary party down there.
I'm really looking forward to it. We were talking about it this morning. Monday,
right?
You're doing the I don't know, like a fireside chat with our GMs.
Yeah, they're like
with
FDR
the Trapeze.
Trapeze.
Yeah, exactly. We got Teresa Domingo from Trapeze, and then followed by Peter Aczel of Vontas. And then Tuesday's the big day that I'm super excited for, because we've got the women leaders of transit, USA style, with 5 fantastic leaders. I think I have heard something from almost all of them now, and I'm really looking forward to that, because the Australian one was fabulous.
Yeah,
and then the cocktails with comfort. Yeah. So
it's going to be big. So this is we'll be celebrating our 4th anniversary, and actually, this episode you told me a few minutes ago is the first one of our 5th season, the one we're talking on right now. Yeah, because we started in November 4 years ago. So to celebrate, we're doing those 2 big events that you just mentioned. We're doing a live Transit Unplugged CEO roundtable. It'll include Nadine Lee, the CEO of Dallas's DART system, Leslie Richards out here on the East Coast with me. She's head of SEPTA, Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority in Philly. And then Lauren Skyver, who's my longtime friend, who's CEO of Sunline Transit. Lauren, speaking of hydrogen power, is one of the leaders of hydrogen. I actually was able to visit a hydrogen plant that she built a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic. She actually sells hydrogen onto the market with her plant there, as well as power her own buses. And then MJ Maynard, who I recently visited out in Las Vegas, who's head of the RTC, the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, which is really a great agency because it does more than just transit. They're also the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They do roads and all kinds of stuff. And then my good friend Bakara Sanderson Malden, who was the CEO of a couple systems and now is chief of staff with Gary down at Memphis Area Transit Authority, where the king is from, Elvis. So she's great. She's going to be on the panel too.
But then cocktails with comfort in that 3:30. Right. That's the big celebration. There's something new you're doing.
Yeah, what is that?
You're doing.
Yeah. So this is our official party from 3 to 4:30 on Tuesday. The CEO roundtable will be a little bit earlier, from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 at our booth 353, which is the Trapeze-Vontas booth in Hall A. And so then at 3:00 is the party, and about 15 minutes in, we're going to unveil Transit Unplugged TV. So we've been working on this. I visited, our buddies in Nashville, Tennessee, and then we visited Vegas, as I mentioned. And we're going to also be filming the women's panel for our 3rd episode, and some other interviews you and I do while we're down there for the show. But this will be an opportunity to kind of show what we call in the industry a sizzle reel. So it's like a preview for a movie. It's just probably going to be 3 minutes long, but it's going to show you kind of what we're hoping to do.
And it's really exciting. And like you and I have talked about this brings a whole new aspect to, I think, understanding transit agencies and the communities they serve, because you were inspired by Anthony Bourdain, and you've talked about that before. And I think this is transit agencies don't exist in isolation. They support a community. And a neighbor of mine is a driver here for TransLink, and we're part of the community. And I think showing that on TV in a show is going to be really cool.
Yeah, well, and the other cool thing we're doing at our celebration is, this is, as we just mentioned, our 5th season going into this, and we've been working for the last several months on an update of some various things. Why don't you tell them what we're updating, what we're going to share with them there?
Yeah, this is very exciting. This is one of the things when I joined about 6 months ago, it's like, wow, we're missing a few things on the website that we need, like search. And so we're unveiling a brand new logo, which I'm very excited about, and Paul, you've seen. And I think the crown jewel is actually a new website. And what we're doing is making it, I guess, more listener focused is really what it is. Search. You'll be able to look for particular episodes. You'll be able to look for particular guests, particular regions. So you can go right to a region, and an updated look and feel. We call it the Netflix style.
Yeah, I love it.
Like browse that thing. And this is what's really exciting. And then we'll update all the other graphics, but the website's the crown jewel.
Yeah.
That is what I'm really excited about. though I have to say the logo is pretty damn cool.
It is good. You're right. And we've got, a lot of people on our team that we will thank at the appropriate point, but they've been working, a lot of people on our team. And I'm also excited, Randy on our team has been working on new social media presence for the show. We're going to have our own LinkedIn page, our own Twitter page, and our own Instagram page for Transit Unplugged.
And YouTube for Transit Unplugged TV.
Tuesday, November 9th, I think. Everything goes live that day.
Everything goes live Tuesday, November 9th. Paul, it's great to actually chat, you and I.
Yeah.
And get ready for the show.
Yeah. Well, hey, before I go, Tris, I just want to thank you in front of all of our listeners, so to speak, for the great work you've been doing in improving the sound quality and the effort you're putting in to just make the show more professional and better. As we go into our 5th year, we're heard in 100 countries now, and now we're heading into TV. You're a good partner to have. So thank you for all the work you've been doing.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. You're a fabulous host. And the more I listen to, it's like, he knows everybody, which I'm sure everyone says, it's like, Paul knows everybody, but this is a great thing because I love this medium and it's a great topic.
Very good. So, we'll see you down there in Orlando, along with all of our friends from the show.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged News and Views. Thank you again to our special guests, Roger Helmy and Mike Bismeyer. Paul and I are really looking forward to meeting and seeing all of you at APTA next week. In addition to all the events at the Trapeze-Vontas booth, Paul will be at the Tripspark booth 769, Monday, 1:30 p.m. for a special taping of Transit Unplugged. And word is, they'll be giving away copies of his books too. In the meantime, if you have a question or comment or would like to be a guest on Transit Unplugged, please feel free to email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. Until next week, ride safe and ride happy.